Hi everyone, I'm Dale Smith, aka Journo Dale, and we're here to talk about Canadian politics. It's time to take your questions, and we've just got the one this week from Twitter, and it's from AB Educator, I'm guessing that's Alberta Educator, who asks what it is about Poilievre that is resonating with voters. I see zero ideas from him on issues like affordability. Well, he has been going around what he calls the Axe the Tax tour to various places around the country on the notion that he's going to cut the carbon price, which doesn't actually help with affordability because the rebates are more than what most people pay for it in the country, or areas of the country that are subject to the federal price. And the costs of climate change are even more than what people pay in carbon prices. So that is something that will need to be considered, but that's kind of the idea he's been bringing forward. He's got this, I'm not going to say grade school notion, but it's the notion that comes from watching too many crypto bros on YouTube, where he figures that balancing the budget is what's going to lower inflation and therefore interest rates. This situation is a lot more complex than that. The inflation situation is largely global. So a balanced budget in Canada would do pretty much nothing around any of that. The causes of inflation have nothing to do with too much government spending and the so-called printing of money, which didn't happen during the pandemic. So there's a lot of causal stuff in there that he's promoting that doesn't actually pan out in real life, but there are people who believe that when he says it, because people don't explain it very well, particularly in English Canada. We have a very poor understanding of economics in mass media because we take the notion that math is hard and we should avoid it, that kind of thing. So that's part of what is resonating with people. He's got this notion that he's going to cut taxes largely predicated on carbon prices, but he would likely intimate that he would cut other taxes as well, and that creates, people like that when they hear it. But what he doesn't talk about is the flip side of that is the huge cuts in services that would also result if he wants to both cut taxes and balance the budget. And if those cuts don't include defense spending, because he also thinks that we should be at our 2% NATO target, then that means there's going to be a whole lot of other cuts in other places, and there will be repercussions for that for people, and that's in there as well. Other reasons why he's resonating have a lot to do with just the fact that the government is getting old. It's coming up on its 8th year this fall, and governments get tired. They get arrogant, they get complacent, and all of that stuff is kind of starting to manifest itself amongst the Liberals. I don't know that they have done a very good job of trying to shake things up enough. The cabinet shuffle was one thing, but there are some particularly necessary backroom changes that they need to be making, but they're not, that could improve some of the ways in which they're doing things, and which could help shake off some of the complacency which they're demonstrating. But again, they haven't really done those changes, and they are unlikely to do those changes. So that's going to be a problem for them. But that is also one of the reasons why Poilievre, and not necessarily Poilievre personally, but the Conservatives rather, are resonating a little more, is because the government is getting tired. People are kind of getting tired of the Prime Minister, more just for longevity than anything else. So those are some of the reasons. They aren't necessarily good reasons in people's books, but that's kind of the way some of the cyclical nature of Canadian politics goes. We tend to get tired of governments every 2 or 3 terms, and then the impulse to kick the bums out starts to really pick up, barring any particular disasters. And thus far, Poilievre has not had a serious one on his watch, but hard to say. I mean, Scheer and O'Toole both self-immolated during their elections, so that could yet happen in the next election cycle. We don't know. But yeah, those are some of the reasons why he seems to be resonating. The other thing too is that it's summertime in the polls. People aren't really paying attention. So they kind of start drifting, take them for what they're worth, which is not much. And that's kind of where we seem to be at. Amongst the conservative base, he resonates a little more because he is seen as much more of a fighter, much more pugilistic. He's much more willing to take the low road, and some people seem to respond to that. We've definitely seen that play out a lot in American politics, and that is coming up across the border is this particular attitude amongst certain politicians in how they interact with one another. And so I think that plays into a little bit as well. I don't know that it's necessarily bringing in the right people in the political center that they're trying to hug. But again, the bigger danger there is that Liberal voters stay home and just not vote, whereas Conservative voters would vote, because that has a really big dynamic that I think gets overlooked in how we think about how elections play out in this country. So those are some thoughts anyway as to what we seem to be seeing. That's kind of what I'm seeing. That's everything for this week. Thanks for your question. Join us again next week for some more Canadian politics. I'm Dale Smith. That's at journo_Dale on Twitter. And yes, I'm still calling it Twitter. And don't forget to like the video, share, subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Thanks, everyone.